And another week. I know we're in what is today? Today is Friday, July 17th as I'm recording this. We are halfway through July. Can you believe that? Oh my gosh. Anyway, before we get started, I have talked about a couple of times that I'm offering a new program for 4 weeks, and it's really about reclaiming you. And gosh, when we talk about reclaiming, what does that mean? Taking back your power. That's what comes to mind for me right now as I say that. And it is really about you being okay with you, that you are how you are, who you are, and you are the best version of you right here, right now. But sometimes we have stories, right? We have experiences, we have stories that can replay in our head on rinse and repeat. And we start, really, beating ourselves up pretty hard. And then that lowers our frequency. That lowers how we feel about ourselves. It can create self-doubt about who we are and where we're going and what should I be doing? And is this right for me? And then, we send that same energy out to others around us unknowingly, but we do. And, so how can we pull that back, and what can we do with those stories that you've been telling yourself, taking back your power, reclaiming you, and stop giving you away, because you're priceless. I'm priceless. We are all priceless in our own unique way with our own unique gifts. So this 4-week program, it's really about the start of reclaiming you. And it's 4 weeks, one live call per week. I don't do modules or course replays and homework and things like that. I best serve you when I am in the room with you. You tell me why you're here. What's bringing you here that's causing you some grief and pain? What are you wanting to work through? And then we go from there. Now, there might be techniques and stuff that I will give you in between calls to help you move out that energy and start healing that energy. And each week it's going to look a little different. You're guiding me. What do you need? And that's how I base my program for you. So it's not a program that looks like anybody else's that is in the program with me. I tailor it specifically to you. And I know you hear that a lot. I hear that a lot from others. And I think that's one of the reasons why I don't like doing pre-recorded coursework for people. I might someday, but not today. And I want to keep it very easy for you and not piling on a bunch of things for you to do. We meet for an hour, maybe an hour and a half once a week. And, that sometimes can be a lot for someone, but to do that and to give them some coursework to go through and to give them homework, it can feel very overwhelming and a lot for some people. And I think sometimes that's why we don't take the step to uncover what's really poking at us. That poke, what is that poke telling us? That poke's telling us something we need to heal, we need to pay attention to, we need to work through. And maybe it's fear. And I totally get that. We all have fear of some sort or other. I know I have talked about this many times. I had fear of doing a podcast, but I worked through it and here I am. So anyway, 4 weeks, we get to know each other. We find out where you're wanting to go, what you're wanting to get from these 4 weeks, and what is it that is calling to you to be worked through, to be healed, to start to uncover those layers, to move that energy, to heal that energy and move it out of your body. That's what we're looking for. And then as we go through these 4 weeks and as we end, I will give you some practices that can help move you forward. So that's kind of how that works. And the investment is $84.99 for all 4 weeks. And, like I've said before, I like the number $84.99 for some reason. It's not the traditional. I don't know. I think I've seen them for $97 or maybe $149 or $300. I want to make this accessible for everyone who needs it. And I like the numbers. So there we go. Now that's that. And I will put some notes in this down in the show notes and stuff for all of that. I do not have a specific date in mind yet for the start date, but it will be in mid-August. And I was thinking about this. So on the 14th, we had a new moon. And I don't know why I always want to call the new moon a full moon, even though I know it's a new moon. But anyway, we had a new moon and there was a lot of energy around that. I noticed around me and even in myself, some old stories would come up on replay in my mind. And it's like, okay, what's going on here? Because a lot of times we think we've healed whatever that is, but then something comes up and we work through that. Start to move those energies. And how is it making us feel in our body? So there's memories that come up that can be very sad. It could be grief and sadness. It could be anger. It could be abandonment or doubt or negativity of some nature. And maybe that feeling that you're having, you can't quite put a name to. And that's okay. Because sometimes we have feelings that we really can't name or we can't label. Because I know sometimes I have that. People will say, well, how are you really feeling about that? Like, I don't have a name for it right now. And I have to let it sit for a while. And sometimes the feeling, the name of the feeling will come up later. And that's just kind of how I work. And that's also how my human design works as well. So as a 2-4 projector, I'm as a 2-4 projector, emotional projector, I am looking for clarity in that mind too. And I'll give you a couple of ahas that I had this week, and then we'll really get into, the topic of the show today. So what were some of the ahas? I told you I'm a line 2-4 projector, emotional projector. So my authority, how I make decisions really sits in how I feel about it. And people say you got to go through the wave. And that is an experiment and a learning experience in itself that I'm always learning from one day to the next. It may not always be about the simple, smaller decisions, but those big guys, buying a car, a new job, a new relationship, moving, some sort of big purchase or big decision, a medical decision that maybe, you have to have. And I have to go through that wave of how I feel and where I end up. Is it a yes or a no? Or it could be a very neutral feeling that in some cases I need more information. So those are some of the things that I have found. But I heard something this week that might help anyone that is a 2-4 projector, a 2-4 emotional projector, or really a 2-4 generator, manifester, mani-gen, reflector. And I hope this helps. The emotional decision, that 2 clarity and that emotional decision, because I'm always looking for clarity, right? Is this the thing? How will this work? I need clarity of how this is going to move forward. I need to know that path. Will this succeed? Clarity, right? What I discovered this week, and it's always kind of been there, but it was like this big, oh my gosh, I finally got it. It was a big deal for me. It's like, okay, that clarity I'm looking for and that line too is also about my emotional wave. So when I listen to it, and sometimes I kind of have to pay attention to it, and sometimes it's a screamer. I feel this almost, sometimes I feel like this twisting, not a good feeling in my solar plexus, in my gut, in my heart, especially in my heart. And I know the answer is no. And that comes from my heart, then that comes from my gut. It does not come from my head. But when I have that, I know I finally put that piece together with the clarity that I seek as a line two. So I don't know that if that would help anyone. I know when I made that connection, I put those dots together actually just a couple of days ago. It was a big shift for me, and it made me more appreciative of these sensations and the feelings that I have in my body and to follow those, not the stories in my head. And then the other piece that I had to share, I was talking with a 2-4 emotional generator. Was it? I think it was yesterday. And during the new moon that was on the 14th, they were out doing some errands and working on a project. And as they were working on this project, all these old stories started to replay in their head of, why did I do it like that? I should have done this. I should have done that. I wish I'd have done this different. So on and so on and so on. Now, that happened to be on the same day as the new moon. And when I was talking with them, It's like, yeah, all these old stories, just old events started replaying in my head as I'm working on this project. And it's like, what kind of old stories? Because I'm curious and I'm going to ask questions. And they started telling me a few of them. And I looked at them and it's like those stories that's going on in your head, those are indicators that your body is ready to release those old energies, those old stories you've been telling yourself, and those low energies you've been feeling about sadness and anger and frustration. So are you ready now to release some of those energies? And we talked about it. And for that person, talking was the release for them. And I've talked to other people who've had similar experiences, and talking wasn't an energy release for them. And with them, we worked on the tapping, and the tapping really just hits all these meridians. And these meridians are connected to certain parts of our body, like the one under the eye is connected to your stomach. And I heard this thing earlier this week, and I wanted to get a chance to read more on it before I hopped on here today, and I didn't. But essentially, is the gate 40 in human design, and I have that, so that's kind of what really caught my attention, is directly connected to our digestion and the gut issues and the health. And it's like, I really want to learn more about that because I have every one of those problems. So anyway, that when we get the full moons, when we get the new moons and the energies and the old stories that come up and the feelings that come up that you thought were all gone, that's when it's such a great time to start to release those old energies. And a lot of times the new moon and the full moon, both, it's a time to start the release. It's a time to recognize, it's a time to release and to start something new. And I felt for this full new moon, oh, see, I almost did it again, that this was a time to reclaim and release a lot of these old stories and these old energies that we've been carrying around. And some of them, they might be small ones, and you're like, where did that come from? They're all stored in our bodies. They really are. And they come up when they're ready to come up. They come up when they're ready to come up because that's your indicator. It's time to release. So anyway, that's my story for the week. And it also kind of goes, to me, it goes hand in hand with what I wanted to talk to you about today. And it's really about, hey, why do we attract a lot of the same type of people, the same type of energies and new people over and over again? Now, I have found for myself when I was in a very shadowy place of, many years ago, I was attracting a lot of like toxic people in my life, and they were not healthy and they were not good for me. And I would see that sometimes sooner than other times. And I would see what was going on, and I would have to say, look, we can't do this. I cannot be around this type of talk, this type of constant negativity against everyone around them and finding fault with everyone around them. And I could see and feel in my body, I was absorbing that. Because for me, I'm going to hit human design one again here. For my human design, I only have two centers that are defined. So my solar plexus and my will, my heart, my sacral, my root, my spleen, throat, head, ajna, all those bits and pieces, which may sound foreign to you. It's all part of human design, but those were open centers for me. I still have all the things, but the openness, when someone was like that, such a low energy, a low frequency, it was very hard for me to be around that because I was absorbing that energy and I was actually staying inside of me. This was way, way before I realized that people carried energy. And depending on who and how we are, we receive that energy. And if we don't realize it, it actually belongs to someone else. All of a sudden, we're starting to store that energy and we're starting to amplify those energies and everything we say and do with everybody around us. And I started to notice that about myself. It's like, I can't have this. And I would remove them. I know that sounds cold, but I would remove them from my circle. Now, if they came to me and said, Terry, I really need your help with something, I would hear them out, probably help them because they needed help, but to keep them in my close circle of around the people around me, I couldn't do that unless that they started to make some changes in how they were moving through life and how they were changing their inner story. I needed to change my inner story, so I would remove them. But if I didn't start doing that, I would continue to call in, attract, rather is probably a better word, attract that same type of low frequency toxic energy. And I would get into a very repeated pattern of toxic people in my life. So does that sound like something you are familiar with? Is it something maybe that you're doing that now that you hear it out loud that, I'm saying the words, it's like, I'm doing that. Or, I'm doing a little bit of that, maybe not a lot, but I'm doing a little bit of that. So, how can I start to shift all of that? Well, I think the biggest step is that you recognize that you're starting to walk down that path that you have a pattern. So we want to disrupt that pattern. And really, you hold the power to have those people in your life. You have the power to change your story that says, I don't want that story anymore. I want to change my story. I am going to talk to myself differently. I am going to treat myself with the respect and love that I deserve. Because when you treat yourself with the respect and the love that you're seeking from others, when you do it to yourself first consistently, you change your vibration, you change your frequency, you change your story, and you will start to attract other people at that same frequency, and you will start to see a shift. So let's start thinking about how we interact with others, the stories they are saying, the energies they are projecting out to you. Can you recognize when it's yours or theirs? And sometimes you have to kind of take a step back and step away, physically step away. I started to say into another room, but that's not always the case because our energy has a very, very big field around us. Sometimes, actually leaving the house, the building you're in, and going to another building or driving down the street just a little bit alone time or going to the park, going for a walk by yourself to recalibrate your energy so you can see the difference of how your energy and their energy interchanges versus when you're by yourself. And when you bring someone on into your field and you feel that shift, what kind of shift is it? Is it a good shift? Or is it one that's bringing you down into a lower frequency? And those lower frequencies, those lower stories, those stories that you want to change start coming up. There's your clue. Also, how you feel in your body when you're around that person. Are you like, shoot, I got to spend the day with Sally and I really don't want to because she's so negative and it just really brings me down? Or is it like, I get to go spend the day with Sally and we're going to go do something fun and this is going to be amazing. You see the energy shift? So who do you have in your life and how can you start to manage that? And sometimes we're talking family members and family, right? So it's not like you can say, nope, but you can say, I can't do this anymore. I can't have these type of conversations. I don't like what this does to me. So we need to stop this. And sometimes it's a matter of just saying, I can't do this. I can't have these kind of conversations. And hopefully they are understanding enough and open enough that they will start to make that shift. And they will have different types of conversations with you that don't trigger these lower frequencies, these lower energies, or trigger these emotions, are not emotions, these feelings, because our feelings change, right? From day to day, moment to moment. And so let's start to recognize the pattern of the type of people, the pattern of conversation, the pattern of action, the pattern of how you feel inside, and also the pattern of what's triggering you. So those are like my big guys there. Those are like the ahas of hold on. And if it's a friend or, you're considering a deeper relationship with this person, maybe have a conversation with them if it's safe, or you make a decision that says, look, we can't take this any further and we need to separate and step away. And I truly believe we can do that in a very loving way. It doesn't have to be full of angst and hurt and hurtful words. It can be done with love for both sides. So there we go. So there's some, like red flags there, some early bird signs in your body to look for, which heart is saying, or is it going, "Urgh," and or your gut. You get, for me, I get like this sensation. It's not a good one of ew, ick, no. And I've actually had those specific words pop up in my head when that sensation has hit my body in certain times when when I am confronted with certain things. And so I've learned to listen to that, and I got to look at my notes because, yep, we know I need my notes. And how do you want to change that? That's really a lot of what this is. And we look at all those bits and pieces that we talked about here in that 4-week program. What brings you to me? What do you want to work on? Where do you feel pain in your heart, in your gut? Or is it a story that's playing on repeat? And it's like, I need this to please stop. Add those. So we look at that. Then we look at how we start moving that energy out of your body. And then we look at it even deeper. And then I start giving you practices to work on during the week, like I said, in between calls. And in that 4th week, we try and bring as much of it together for you as possible so you have some steps when you leave. So that's the 4 weeks. Like I said, it's an investment of $84.99. And we can always look at a longer program for you if you're not ready and you want to go deeper. But that's where I would advise you to start. So, and make sure it works for you. Okay? Because you want it to work for you. I want it to work for you. So that's kind of the long and short of it all. And I'll leave the website for human design if you'd like to run your chart. There's a free human chart that I have sitting on my website. It's a 10-page, which is a great place to start. That is, I would tell anyone to start there because those 3 bits and pieces of who and how you are, you can do that and start to play around with how that makes you feel. Let it sit, let it marinate. And we also take that into consideration in this 4 weeks. So I would also ask you to bring your human design or allow me to see it before our first call to let me digest and learn about it from that aspect. Because a lot of times what I can see is bits and pieces of where that wounding and those stories are being held stronger, if you will, within your body. So that's it for now. I hope you guys have an amazing week. And I would love for you to like and share, subscribe, do all the things. If you're on YouTube, have any questions, please give me a shout. I will respond. And for those not on YouTube but have questions, please send me an email. I will leave my email in the show notes and we'll talk soon.